but it invites us to think in new and wonderful ways. And of course, Jesus brings it home with these fishermen. He knows that he's got those folks in his audience, and most of them are sitting pretty close to him as his disciples. And so he's inviting them to think about this net full of fish being brought in. An abundance. So as we move through these parables so quickly, we move from invasive species, invasive Word of God, into growing and expanding Word of God, into the sense of our reaction to it in deep craziness, to finally the sense of abundance and of things being sorted out. Now, this whole weeping and gnashing of teeth, I'm one of those people that believes that Matthew, along with some of the other writers, incorporated things along the road. Added to the parables to try to get people to really pay attention to them. And that as we hear these stories, what it does is it invites us to think very deeply. But it also calls us to think that this weeping and gnashing of teeth isn't just about one person here and one person there, but in our own lives and in our own hearts. What is being saved or stored up? And what do we need to throw away? What anger, what frustration, what hurt, what materialism or greed, what war, what anger. Now, we like to think here in the United States that we live in an extremely Christian, well, let's say that some of us like to think we live in an extremely Christian country. However, I have been amazed over the last 2 days by a country that by many in the United States is deemed extremely secular and not very committed to following Jesus in some ways, is a country that I believe lives out this gospel, this invasive word of love and mercy, of grace, in a way at which we fail. Imagine, on 9/11, after the attacks on U.S. soil, what the responses were with anger and outrage, and the number of people who either thought or wondered who we were going to attack right away. Whereas, if you listen to the words of the Prime Minister of Norway, Jens Stoltenberg, as people have asked him, he has said, we are not going to allow this to change who we are. As a people in an open society, in a democracy, we are going to live richly as a people. And they've demonstrated this before. Years ago, in a much more minor accident or event in the life of their country, Skrike, or The Scream. Edvard Munch's painting was stolen from their art museum, which is open. You can walk right up to it. You can take flash photography. You can do most anything in that art museum as you appreciate the art. It was stolen. But rather than hunker down and lock things up, what they did is they said, well, we're sad. A great piece of art has been taken, but we are not going to let us change how the people here can appreciate art or can take in the world around them. We are not going to add security after security. In a sense, what they did was they challenged their citizens to be more present, to appreciate what was happening, and to be accountable. What would a vision of God's realm here and now, look like for us? It calls us to accountability, but also calls us to living fully and deeply in a sense of mercy, of love, living in shalom, in peace. how is it going to invade our hearts and our lives today? This neighborhood has not been immune to violence. Our lives have not been immune to violence. As we look around this place, poverty is present. For those who work in the emergency food shelf, there's an awareness of how it affects us and our community. What are the seeds that are being planted now that are going to expand and grow, that are going to change us? And what's the story going to be going forward? Just as Jesus tells the disciples these stories and then asks them, do you get it? And they respond, yes. Perhaps we too would like to respond so boldly, but then catch ourselves thinking, I'm not so sure. But what happens if, like the Spirit washing over us, we let these stories wash over us? And that the parable becomes less about what's caught in a book, but about the lives of the people. That as the story takes root and grows into a shrub and a tree, that it's not just about a seed in Palestine, but about the people living richly and fully. That the birds of the air make their nests in us. Creation connects with us. People rest in our shade. That becomes the living parable as we walk in the ways of Jesus. Thanks be for learning, for growing, for being